The gunshot that killed Amelia Grant's husband was the sound of her freedom, though she would never dare speak those words aloud in Randsburg, California. Not in the autumn of 1897, when decent women were expected to mourn properly and thoroughly. She stood at the graveside with her eyes appropriately downcast, aware of the whispers rippling through the small crowd like wind through dried wheat, aware that every person present knew exactly what kind of man Thomas Grant had been behind closed doors. The bruises on her wrists were hidden beneath black lace gloves, but the fading yellow mark on her cheekbone was visible enough if anyone cared to look closely, which they did not. Decent people did not acknowledge such things, not even when the evidence stood before them in the bright California sunshine. The preacher's words washed over her without meaning. All she could think about was what would happen next. The ranch, such as it was, belonged to Thomas's brother in Sacramento, who had already sent word that he would be arriving within the month to settle the estate. Amelia owned nothing, not even the dress she wore, purchased with her dead husband's money. At 23 years old, she was a widow with no family, no prospects, and a reputation that had been thoroughly destroyed by her late husband's drunken boasts in the saloon about his wife's supposed failings. When the last shovel of dirt covered the pine box, Amelia turned and walked back toward the small house at the edge of town that she had shared with Thomas for 3 miserable years. The other mourners, if they could be called that, dispersed quickly. No one offered condolences or help. She was alone, just as she had been alone in her marriage, just as she suspected she would be alone for whatever remained of her life. Inside the house, Amelia removed the black hat and veil, setting them carefully on the kitchen table. The rooms were quiet without Thomas's heavy footsteps and angry voice. She had cleaned the blood from the floor where he had fallen, shot by a drifter in an argument over cards, though some said it was over a woman at the saloon. Either way, Thomas Grant had died as he had lived, causing trouble and leaving messes for others to clean up. She had exactly 2 weeks before Thomas's brother would arrive. 2 weeks to find somewhere to go, some way to survive. Amelia stood in the center of the kitchen and tried to think practically. She could cook, clean, and manage a household. She could read and write, unusual for a woman of her circumstances. Her mother had insisted on education before she died when Amelia was 15. But none of those skills mattered if no one would hire her. The women of Randsburg had made their position clear over the past 3 years. They crossed the street rather than walk past her. They pulled their children close when she appeared in the general store. Whatever Thomas had told people, whatever lies he had spread about her character, had taken root in the fertile soil of small-town gossip. And now, as a widow whose husband had died in a saloon fight, her reputation was beyond salvaging. Amelia went to the bedroom and pulled out the small carpet bag she had brought with her when she married Thomas. Inside were the few possessions that were truly hers. A photograph of her parents, taken before her mother's death. A silver locket that had belonged to her grandmother. A book of poetry, its pages worn soft from reading. She packed these carefully, then added the few items of clothing that were not too worn or too associated with her life as Mrs. Thomas Grant. The next morning, she walked into town and placed an advertisement in the window of the general store, offering her services as a housekeeper or cook. The store owner, a thin man named Patterson, took her nickel without meeting her eyes. She knew what that meant, but she had to try. 3 days passed without a single response. Amelia stretched her meager resources, eating sparingly, wondering if she should use her grandmother's locket to buy train passage to Sacramento or San Francisco, where she might disappear into the anonymity of a larger city. But what would she do there? The same problems would follow her. A young woman alone, without references or connections, was vulnerable in ways that made her stomach clench with fear. On the fourth day, a man appeared at her door. Amelia opened it cautiously, keeping the chain latched. The man who stood on her porch was tall and weathered, with dark hair touched with gray at the temples and eyes the color of storm clouds. He held his hat in his hands and looked distinctly uncomfortable. "Mrs. Grant," he said, his voice rough as if unused to speaking. "My name is Isaiah Montgomery. I have a ranch about 15 miles north of here. I saw your advertisement." Amelia studied him through the gap in the door. She had seen him before, occasionally in town, always alone, always quiet. People said he had come to California after the war, bought land that nobody wanted, and had been working it alone ever since. That was nearly all she knew about him, except that he was generally considered an odd man who kept to himself. "I am looking for someone to keep house," Isaiah continued when she did not respond. "To cook and clean. The work is honest and I would pay fair wages. Room and board provided." "You want to live in housekeeper," Amelia said slowly. She could already imagine what the town would say about that arrangement. A widow living alone with a bachelor rancher. It would be the final nail in the coffin of her reputation. "Yes, madam." Isaiah shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "I know it is not a conventional arrangement. But my ranch is isolated, too far for someone to travel daily. I can provide a separate bedroom with a lock on the door. I give you my word that you would be treated with respect." Amelia almost laughed at that. Respect was not something she had experienced in a very long time. She studied Isaiah's face, looking for signs of the cruelty she had learned to recognize in Thomas. But this man's eyes were steady and serious, without the mean glint that had always warned her when her husband's temper was rising. "Why me?" she asked. "Surely there are other women who would be more suitable, women with better reputations." Isaiah met her gaze directly. "I asked around town. No one else would consider working for me. They say I am strange. They say my ranch is cursed because nothing seems to prosper there the way it should. And I know what they say about you, Mrs. Grant. I do not put much stock in gossip. I need help and you need a position. That is all that matters to me." There it was, then. Two outcasts, both rejected by the good people of Randsburg for different reasons. Amelia felt a strange kinship with this uncomfortable stranger standing on her porch. She had no other options, no other possibilities on the horizon. Thomas's brother would arrive in less than 2 weeks, and then she would be truly homeless. "When would you need me to start?" she asked. "As soon as you are able," Isaiah said. He looked almost surprised that she was considering his offer. "I could come for you tomorrow with the wagon if that suits you." "Tomorrow is fine," Amelia said. She thought about asking more questions, about demanding details and assurances, but what was the point? She was in no position to negotiate. "What time should I be ready?" "First light, if that is acceptable. It is a long drive to the ranch." After Isaiah left, Amelia sat down at the kitchen table and tried to calm the trembling in her hands. She had just agreed to move to an isolated ranch with a man she did not know, based on nothing more than his word that he would treat her with respect. It was possibly the most foolish decision she had ever made, or possibly the most sensible. She could not tell which. She spent the rest of the day packing her few belongings and cleaning the house one final time. Let Thomas's brother arrive to find everything in order. Let him have no reason to speak ill of her, though he likely would anyway. That night, Amelia lay awake in the darkness, listening to the familiar sounds of the house settling around her. She thought about her parents, both long dead. She thought about the girl she had been before she married Thomas, full of hopes she could barely remember now. She thought about the unknown future waiting for her at Isaiah Montgomery's ranch. When dawn broke pale and cool over the California hills, Amelia was dressed and ready, her carpetbag sitting by the door. She wore her simplest dress, a gray cotton that was practical and plain. She had pinned her dark blonde hair back severely, trying to look as respectable and unremarkable as possible. Isaiah arrived precisely at first light, driving a sturdy wagon pulled by 2 horses. He helped her load her bag into the back, his movements efficient and impersonal. Amelia took one last look at the house where she had spent 3 years of her life, then climbed up onto the wagon seat without a backward glance. They rode in silence through the awakening town. A few early risers were already about, and Amelia felt their eyes following the wagon. Let them look. Let them whisper. She was leaving Randsburg behind, and she felt no regret about that. The road north wound through scrubby hills dotted with Joshua trees and sagebrush. The morning air was cool, though Amelia knew the afternoon would be hot. Isaiah drove with competent ease, his attention on the road and the horses. He did not attempt conversation, and Amelia was grateful for that. She was not ready to make small talk with this stranger who was now her employer. As they traveled, the land grew rougher and more isolated. They passed a few other ranches, but they were far apart, separated by miles of undeveloped territory. This was harsh country, Amelia realized, beautiful in its stark way but unforgiving to those who tried to make a living from it. "How long have you had your ranch?" she asked finally, breaking the long silence. 15 years, Isaiah said. "I bought the land in 1882 after I had saved enough from working other men's cattle. You run cattle, some, also horses." "I have been trying to develop a breeding program for horses suited to this climate, strong and reliable. It has been slow going." He paused, then added, "I am not much of a businessman. I am better with animals than with people." Amelia could understand that sentiment. "What happened to your previous housekeeper?" "I have never had one," Isaiah said. "I have been managing on my own since I came here, but the ranch has grown to the point where I cannot keep up with both the animals and the household. I realized I needed help. After 15 years. Isaiah glanced at her briefly, then returned his attention to the road. "I am not comfortable around most people. It took me a long time to accept that I could not do everything myself." They fell back into silence, but it was a slightly easier silence now. Amelia watched the landscape roll past and tried not to think too hard about what she was doing. She was committed now, for better or worse. The sun was high overhead when Isaiah finally turned the wagon off the main road onto a narrower track that wound up into the hills. After another half hour, they crested a rise, and Amelia saw the ranch spread out below them in a small valley. It was larger than she had expected. The main house was a low, adobe structure with a covered porch running along the front. Several outbuildings clustered nearby, including a barn, a stable, and what looked like a bunkhouse. Fences marked out corrals and pastures. In the distance, Amelia could see horses grazing, their coats gleaming in the sunlight. "It is a good piece of land," Isaiah said, and there was quiet pride in his voice. "Water from the creek that runs through the valley. Good grazing. Enough flat ground for crops if a man was inclined to farming, though I am not." As they descended into the valley, Amelia could see that the ranch showed signs of hard work, but also of neglect in the details. The fences were sturdy, but could use fresh paint. The yard around the house was trampled dirt without any attempt at a garden or landscaping. Everything was functional but stark, the home of a man who cared only for the essential work and nothing else. Isaiah pulled the wagon up in front of the house and helped Amelia down. Up close, she could see that the house itself was solidly built, but desperately in need of a woman's touch. The windows were dusty, the porch cluttered with tools and tack that should have been stored elsewhere. "I know it needs work," Isaiah said, following her gaze. "I have let things slide. I focus on the animals and the land, and everything else falls by the wayside." He carried her bag inside, and Amelia followed, not sure what to expect. The interior of the house was dim and cool after the bright sunlight outside. As her eyes adjusted, she took in a large main room that served as both kitchen and living area. A stone fireplace dominated one wall. The furniture was rough but handmade, the work of someone with skill but no eye for aesthetics. Dust covered every surface, and there were cobwebs in the corners. Through doorways, she could see 2 bedrooms and what looked like a storage room. Everything was in a state of bachelor disarray. Clothes draped over chairs, dishes stacked haphazardly, papers and books piled on every available surface. "Your room is through here," Isaiah said, leading her to one of the bedrooms. It was small but had a window that looked out over the valley. The bed was unmade, and the room clearly had been used for storage until recently. But there was a dresser and a chair, and as promised, there was a lock on the door. "I cleared it out yesterday," Isaiah said. "I can help you with the linens if you need them." "I can manage," Amelia said. She set her carpetbag down and turned to face him. "What exactly are my duties, Mr. Montgomery?" "Isaiah," he said. "Please, Mr. Montgomery makes me feel like my father, and that is not a pleasant association." "Isaiah, then, and you may call me Amelia," he nodded. "As for duties, I need someone to cook regular meals, keep the house clean, do the laundry, and manage the household stores. I go into town once a month for supplies. If you need anything, you can add it to the list. I will pay you $15 a month plus room and board." If that seems fair to you. $15 a month was more than fair. It was generous, actually. Amelia felt a flicker of suspicion. Why was this man being so generous to her, a woman with a ruined reputation? "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "You could have hired anyone. You did not have to choose me." Isaiah looked at her for a long moment, his gray eyes serious. "I told you. No one else would work for me. But more than that, I know what it is like to be judged by things beyond your control. I know what it is like to have people cross the street to avoid you. After the war, after what I saw and did, I came back different. People could sense it, even if they did not understand it. They were uncomfortable around me. They said I was touched, that I had lost something essential in the fighting. Maybe they were right." He paused, looking out the window at his valley. "When I heard about your situation, about how the town treated you, I thought perhaps we could help each other. You need a place to stay and work. I need someone who will not be afraid of me or my silences. That is all. There is no hidden motive, Amelia. I am simply a lonely man with a ranch that is too big for one person to manage alone." The honesty in his voice convinced her in a way that pretty words never could. Amelia nodded slowly. "Then I will do my best to earn my keep." "I am sure you will." Isaiah moved toward the door. "I will leave you to settle in. Take today to get familiar with the house and where everything is. We can discuss meals and routines tomorrow. I will be working with the horses if you need anything." After he left, Amelia stood in the center of her new room and took a deep breath. The silence of the ranch was different from the silence of the town. It was vast and clean, broken only by the distant sounds of animals and the whisper of wind through the valley. It was the silence of space and possibility, not the oppressive silence of judgment and fear. She unpacked her few belongings, then found linens in the storage room and made up her bed. The mattress was surprisingly good, the frame solid. Isaiah might not care about appearances, but he did not stint on the essentials. Once her room was in order, Amelia explored the rest of the house. The kitchen was reasonably well equipped with a good cast iron stove, pots and pans of various sizes, and basic utensils. The larder was stocked with the staples a bachelor would keep: flour and beans and coffee, but nothing fresh, no vegetables or fruit, no eggs or butter. She found a broom and dustpan and began the overwhelming task of cleaning. Years of accumulated dust and dirt could not be addressed in a single day, but she could make a start. She swept and dusted, shook out rugs, and washed windows until her arms ached. She sorted through piles of papers and books, creating order from chaos. As the afternoon wore on, Amelia found herself growing curious about the man who had hired her. The books scattered around the house were an eclectic mix. Agricultural manuals sat beside volumes of poetry. A worn copy of Plutarch's Lives shared space with a practical guide to horse breeding. This was a man who valued knowledge and learning. Even in his isolation, in one corner, she found a wooden trunk pushed against the wall. It was locked, and she left it alone. Everyone was entitled to their private things, their secrets. Heaven knew she had her own. By evening, the house looked significantly better, though there was still much work to be done. Amelia surveyed the kitchen and realized she should prepare something for dinner. She went outside to find Isaiah and ask what he usually ate. The sun was lowering in the west, painting the valley in shades of gold and amber. Amelia walked toward the corrals, where she could hear the sound of a horse moving, hooves striking the ground in a steady rhythm. She found Isaiah in a round pen, working with a young chestnut horse on a long lead line. He was focused entirely on the animal, his movements fluid and patient, speaking in low tones that Amelia could not quite hear. She stood outside the fence and watched, fascinated despite herself. She knew nothing about horses beyond the basics, but even she could see that Isaiah had a gift for working with them. The young horse was nervous, tossing its head and dancing sideways, but Isaiah never lost patience, never raised his voice or made a sudden movement. Gradually, the horse began to calm, its ears swiveling forward to listen to his voice. Finally, Isaiah seemed satisfied. He led the horse to the center of the pen and ran his hands over its neck and shoulders, still speaking in those low, soothing tones. Then he led it out of the pen and into the stable. When he emerged, he saw Amelia waiting and walked over to her. "Sorry, I lost track of time. That one is coming along nicely, but she needs patient handling." "She is beautiful," Amelia said. "I came to ask what you would like for dinner." Isaiah looked surprised, as if he had forgotten that he now had someone to cook for him. "Whatever you can manage from what is in the larder. I am not particular. I have been living on beans and bacon for years. I will see what I can do. Is there anywhere to get fresh eggs or vegetables?" "I have chickens, though they have been running half wild. The coop is behind the barn. As for vegetables, there used to be a garden plot, but I have not kept it up." He pointed to a fenced area near the house, now overgrown with weeds. "You are welcome to start a garden if you are so inclined." "I might do that," Amelia said. "If I am to cook properly, we will need fresh produce." That evening, she made a simple meal of beans flavored with bacon and onions, cornbread from the supplies in the larder, and strong coffee. It was nothing fancy, but it was hot and filling. Isaiah came in from the evening chores just as she was setting the table. He stopped in the doorway, looking at the table with its simple settings, the food laid out, the lamp casting warm light over the scene. "I have not sat down to a proper meal in my own house in 15 years, he said quietly. They sat across from each other at the rough wooden table, and for a moment neither spoke. Then Isaiah served himself and began to eat. Amelia watched him nervously, waiting for some reaction to her cooking. "This is good," he said after a few bites. "Very good, thank you." The tension in Amelia's shoulders eased slightly. They ate in companionable silence, and she was grateful that Isaiah did not seem to expect conversation. She was tired from the long day, and the emotional upheaval of leaving behind her old life, such as it was. After dinner, Isaiah helped her clear the dishes, an action that surprised her. Thomas had never lifted a finger to help with household tasks, considering them beneath him. But Isaiah carried his plate to the kitchen and pumped water into the basin without being asked. "You do not need to do that," Amelia said. "It is my job." "It is a few dishes," Isaiah replied. "No sense in you working yourself to exhaustion on your first day." They washed and dried the dishes together, moving around each other in the small kitchen. It should have been awkward, this domestic intimacy with a virtual stranger, but somehow it was not. Isaiah was quiet and competent, his presence steady rather than threatening. When the kitchen was clean, Isaiah bid her good night and went to his own room. Amelia locked her door out of habit, then sat on her bed in the lamplight. Through the window, she could see the vast expanse of stars overhead, undimmed by town lights. The night sounds of the ranch filtered through the walls, horses moving in the corral, the distant yip of a coyote, the rustle of wind. For the first time in years, Amelia felt something that might have been peace, or at least the possibility of it. She was safe here, or as safe as a woman could be in this world. She had work to do, a roof over her head and an employer who seemed decent and honest. It was more than she had dared hope for. She blew out the lamp and lay down in the darkness, pulling the clean blankets up to her chin. Tomorrow she would begin in earnest. Tomorrow she would start making this house into a home, not just for Isaiah but for herself. Tomorrow she would start building a new life from the ruins of the old. But tonight, she would simply rest and be grateful for small mercies. Over the following days, Amelia established a routine. She woke at dawn and prepared breakfast, usually eggs from the half-wild chickens that she was gradually taming, bacon or salt pork, and fresh biscuits. Isaiah came in from the morning chores hungry and appreciative, eating whatever she put in front of him with the focused attention of a man who had been half-starving himself for years without realizing it. After breakfast, Isaiah went back to work with the horses and cattle while Amelia tackled the house. She cleaned systematically, one room at a time, scrubbing years of accumulated grime from surfaces, washing curtains and linens, organizing and ordering everything she touched. The house began to transform under her care, revealing itself as a well-built and potentially comfortable home. She found unexpected treasures as she cleaned. A set of good china wrapped in newspaper and stored in the back of a cupboard. A finely woven blanket folded at the bottom of a trunk. Small things that suggested Isaiah had once had different expectations for his life here, expectations that had somehow been abandoned. In the afternoons, she worked on the garden plot. The ground was hard and dry, but the fence was still good. She cleared the weeds and rocks, turning the soil with a determination born of necessity. A garden would mean fresh vegetables, which would mean better meals and better health for both of them. It would also mean she was putting down roots here, investing in a future beyond the immediate present. Isaiah noticed her work in the garden and brought her packets of seeds from a box in the storage room. "I bought these years ago," he said. "Never got around to planting them. They might be too old to grow now." "We will see," Amelia said, taking the packets. Tomatoes, beans, squash, carrots. She would plant them all and hope for the best. They fell into an easy rhythm, speaking little but growing comfortable with each other's presence. Isaiah was a quiet man, but Amelia learned to read his moods in the set of his shoulders and the way he moved through space. She could tell when he had a good day working with the horses, and when the frustration of trying to build something from nothing was wearing on him. For his part, Isaiah seemed to appreciate the changes she was making. He commented on the clean windows, the organized kitchen, the flowers she picked from the wild hillsides and set on the table in a jar. Small things, but they mattered. 2 weeks after Amelia arrived at the ranch, Isaiah came in from the corrals one evening looking troubled. He sat at the dinner table but barely touched his food, his mind clearly elsewhere. "Is something wrong?" Amelia asked finally. Isaiah looked up as if surprised to find her there. "I need to go into town tomorrow for supplies. I was wondering if you would like to come along." Amelia's first instinct was to refuse. She had no desire to face the people of Randsburg again, to see the judgment in their eyes. But she realized that hiding at the ranch forever was not a solution either. Besides, she had a list of things she needed for the kitchen and the garden, things that would be easier to select herself. "Yes," she said, forcing down her anxiety. "I would like to come." The next morning they set out early for the long drive to town. Amelia wore her best dress and tried to look as respectable as possible. Isaiah, she noticed, had also made an effort, putting on a clean shirt and brushing the dust from his hat. The ride was pleasant in the cool morning air. They talked more than usual, Isaiah pointing out landmarks and boundaries, Amelia asking questions about the ranch and the land. She learned that Isaiah owned nearly 500 acres, most of it grazing land but some of it potential farmland if it could be irrigated properly. She learned that he sold horses occasionally to ranchers and to the army, but never as many as he hoped. She learned that he was 38 years old, 15 years her senior, and that he had fought in the Indian Wars before coming to California to start over. "I wanted to build something," he said as they drove. "After years of destroying things, I wanted to create something good and lasting. That is why I chose this land, why I have stayed even when it has been harder than I expected." "It is a good dream," Amelia said. "It is a lonely one, though." "I see that now. A man can work himself to death out here and have nothing to show for it but land and animals. I should have found a wife, started a family. That is what my land needs to become a real home. But I was never good with people, and after the war I was worse. Women found me unsettling." I could see it in their eyes. Amelia understood that feeling all too well. People fear what they do not understand, and they judge harshly those who do not fit their narrow definitions of normal. Isaiah glanced at her. "You speak from experience." "Yes," Amelia said quietly. "I have been judged and found wanting by people who knew nothing of my true circumstances. Thomas told people I was a poor wife, lazy and disobedient. He told them I was the reason he drank and gambled. The truth was very different, but no one wanted to hear it. It was easier to believe that I was at fault." "What was the truth?" Isaiah asked, his voice gentle. Amelia hesitated. She had never spoken of this to anyone. But something about the vast open landscape and Isaiah's quiet acceptance made her want to share the burden she had been carrying alone. "The truth was that Thomas was cruel when he drank, and he drank often. He blamed me for everything that went wrong in his life. When he lost at cards, it was my fault for being a burden on his finances. When he lost his job, it was my fault for not supporting him properly. He used his fists to make his points, and when I tried to fight back, he made sure everyone knew what a difficult, ungrateful wife he had." Her voice was steady, but her hands were clenched in her lap. "I know I should have left him, but where would I have gone? I had no family, no money of my own. And I kept thinking that maybe if I tried harder, did better, he would change. It is a foolish thought, I know now. Men like Thomas do not change." Isaiah was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I am sorry you went through that. No one deserves to be treated that way." and I am sorry the town judged you instead of helping you." "Thank you," Amelia said softly. It was the first time anyone had acknowledged what she had endured, the first time anyone had expressed sympathy rather than censure. They rode in silence for a while, but it was a comfortable silence, the silence of two people who had shared something important and understood each other a little better because of it. When they arrived in Randsburg, Amelia steeled herself for the stares and whispers. But something unexpected happened. When she walked into the general store with Isaiah at her side, the proprietor greeted them politely and asked what they needed. When they passed other townspeople on the street, they received nods of acknowledgement, even if those nods were not particularly warm. It took Amelia a moment to understand. She was with Isaiah now, employed by him. That gave her a context, a place in the social order. She was not just the widow of Thomas Grant anymore, a woman of questionable character living alone. She was the housekeeper at the Montgomery ranch, respectable employment that gave her protection and status. More than that, Isaiah's presence seemed to shield her. He might be considered odd, but he was also known as an honest man who paid his debts and kept to himself. His vouching for her, even if only by proximity, carried weight. They purchased supplies, Amelia selecting carefully from her list while Isaiah arranged for feed and other ranch necessities to be delivered. When they left the store, Amelia felt lighter than she had in years. The town had not welcomed her with open arms, but it had acknowledged her right to exist, and that was more than she had hoped for. On the ride back to the ranch, Amelia found herself smiling. "Thank you for taking me with you," she said to Isaiah. "I did not realize how much I needed that." "You are not a prisoner at the ranch," Isaiah said. "You are free to come and go as you please. I hope you know that." "I do know that. But it is good to be reminded." When they arrived home, for Amelia was beginning to think of it as home, they unloaded the supplies together. Isaiah carried the heavy bags while Amelia organized everything in the larder and kitchen. They worked efficiently, in the way of people who were learning each other's rhythms and habits. That evening, Amelia made a special dinner with some of the fresh supplies they had purchased. Roast chicken with potatoes and carrots, fresh bread, and an apple pie for dessert. It was the kind of meal she had not been able to make in her previous life, when money was always scarce and Thomas drank away what little they had. Isaiah ate with obvious pleasure, complimenting every dish. When he took his first bite of the apple pie, he actually closed his eyes for a moment. "I have not had pie since I left my mother's house," he said. "I had forgotten how good a simple thing could be." After dinner, they sat on the porch in the gathering darkness. It had become a habit in recent evenings, this quiet time when the work was done and they could rest. Isaiah would smoke his pipe while Amelia mended or just sat with her hands folded, enjoying the cool air. "I have been thinking," Isaiah said into the comfortable silence. "The ranch is doing better with you here. Not just because the house is cleaner and the meals are better, though that certainly helps. It is more than that. The place feels alive in a way it has not felt before. It feels like a home instead of just a place where I work and sleep." Amelia felt warmth spread through her chest. "I am glad. I have been happy here, happier than I have been in a long time." "I want you to know that you have a place here for as long as you want it," Isaiah said. "I know you came here out of necessity, but I hope you will choose to stay because you want to, not just because you have no other options." "I want to stay," Amelia said, and she realized it was true. In just a few weeks, this ranch had become more of a home to her than anywhere she had lived since her childhood. "I feel safe here. I feel valued. That is worth more than I can express." Isaiah nodded, seemingly satisfied. They sat in silence as the stars emerged overhead, bright and countless in the clear desert air. Amelia thought about how strange life was, how the worst thing that had happened to her, being cast out by the town as an undesirable woman, had led to the best thing, finding this peaceful place with this quiet, kind man. She was not naive enough to think that all her problems were solved. She knew that her position was still precarious, dependent on Isaiah's goodwill and the ranch's success. But for now, in this moment, she allowed herself to simply be grateful and content. As spring turned to summer, the garden began to flourish under Amelia's care. She watered it faithfully every evening, pulling weeds and protecting the tender plants from the harsh sun. When the first tomatoes ripened, she felt a surge of pride entirely disproportionate to the simple act of growing vegetables. But it represented something more than food. It represented her ability to nurture and create, to bring life from barren ground. Isaiah noticed and commented on her success with the garden. He built her a scarecrow from old clothes and straw to keep the birds away, and he helped her construct a trellis for the climbing beans. These small acts of support and encouragement meant more to Amelia than he probably realized. The ranch work continued its rhythmic cycle. Cattle were moved to different pastures as the grass grew and was depleted. Horses were trained, sold, and replaced with new young stock that Isaiah purchased from other ranchers or captured from wild herds. There was always something that needed fixing or building, and Isaiah worked from dawn to dusk most days. Amelia established her own routines. She woke early to prepare breakfast, spent the morning on household tasks, tended the garden in the afternoon, and prepared dinner in the evening. It was hard work, but it was honest work that she could take pride in. Her hands, which had been soft and pale during her marriage to Thomas, became strong and tanned. She also began to make improvements to the house beyond simple cleanliness. She sewed curtains from fabric she purchased on their monthly trips to town. She arranged the furniture to make the rooms more welcoming. She even convinced Isaiah to help her paint the bedroom that had become hers, transforming it from a dim, dusty space to a light, cheerful room that was truly her own. Through all of this, Amelia and Isaiah grew closer in the way of people who shared daily life. They learned each other's preferences and habits. Amelia learned that Isaiah liked his coffee strong and his bacon crispy. Isaiah learned that Amelia hummed while she worked and that she had a weakness for wildflowers. They began to talk more, sharing stories of their pasts. Isaiah told her about growing up in Missouri, the youngest of 4 brothers, and how he had gone to war at 18 because it seemed like the adventurous thing to do. He told her about the horrors he had witnessed, and the things he had been forced to do, and how those experiences had changed him in ways that made normal life impossible for a long time. Amelia told him about her childhood with loving parents, her mother's death from influenza when she was 15, and her father's death in a logging accident 2 years later. She told him about being alone and frightened, about accepting Thomas's proposal because she thought marriage would provide security and companionship, about how quickly she learned the difference between the man Thomas pretended to be and the man he actually was. These conversations usually happened in the evenings on the porch or sometimes during their monthly drives to town. They were never forced or dramatic, just the gradual sharing of 2 people learning to trust each other. One evening in late July, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set behind the western hills, Isaiah said something that surprised Amelia. "I have been thinking about expanding the horse breeding program," he said. "I have been too cautious, too small scale. If I am serious about making this ranch profitable, I need to take some risks. I want to purchase better breeding stock, mares with good bloodlines. It will cost money I do not really have, but I think it is the right move." "What made you decide this now?" Amelia asked. Isaiah was quiet for a moment. "You did," he said finally. "Watching you work on the garden, seeing how you transformed the house, it made me realize that I have been treading water for 15 years. I have been so focused on just surviving, on just getting by, that I forgot I came here to build something. You reminded me that growth requires risk and effort. You inspired me, Amelia." Amelia felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. "I only did what needed doing." "That is more than most people do," Isaiah said. "Most people talk about what should be done. You simply do it. That takes courage and determination." They fell into a comfortable silence, but Amelia's mind was racing. She was pleased that her work had inspired Isaiah, but she was also aware of a growing feeling in her chest, a warmth that went beyond simple gratitude or friendship. She enjoyed Isaiah's company. She looked forward to their evening conversations. She noticed small things about him, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the gentleness of his hands when he worked with the horses, the sound of his voice in the morning when he greeted her in the kitchen. This was dangerous territory. Isaiah was her employer. She was dependent on him for her livelihood and shelter. Developing romantic feelings for him was foolish and potentially disastrous. If he did not return those feelings, if he felt uncomfortable or pressured, he could dismiss her, and she would be back where she started, alone and without prospects. But knowing something was foolish and being able to control her feelings were two different things. As the weeks passed, Amelia found herself increasingly aware of Isaiah, not just as an employer or a friend, but as a man. A good man, a kind man, a lonely man who deserved more than the isolated existence he had carved out for himself. In August, Isaiah made good on his plan to expand the breeding program. He purchased 3 mares from a ranch near Sacramento, animals with excellent bloodlines that cost more than Amelia could imagine. When they arrived, Isaiah spent hours settling them into the stable, making sure they were comfortable and healthy after their journey. Amelia brought him dinner in the stable that evening, finding him sitting on a hay bale watching the new mares with satisfaction. "They are beautiful," she said, setting the basket of food down beside him. "They are the future of this ranch," Isaiah said. "If I can breed them with my best stallion, the foals should be exceptional. I can sell them for good money, enough to reinvest in more stock and better facilities." "You have put a lot of faith in this plan," Amelia observed. "I have put a lot of faith in the future," Isaiah corrected. "Something I have not done in a long time. You gave me that, Amelia. You gave me hope that tomorrow might be better than today." He looked at her as he said this, and there was something in his eyes that made Amelia's breath catch. It was not just gratitude or friendship. It was something deeper, something that mirrored the feelings she had been trying to ignore. For a moment, they simply looked at each other in the dim, stable light. Then Isaiah stood abruptly, breaking the moment. "I should let you get back to the house. Thank you for bringing dinner." Amelia nodded and left, her heart pounding. She was not imagining it. Isaiah felt something for her too. The question was what either of them would do about it. Over the next few weeks, the tension between them grew. They were both aware of it, both careful to maintain appropriate boundaries, but also both clearly struggling with feelings that were becoming harder to ignore. Isaiah became more attentive, finding excuses to spend time near the house, helping with tasks that did not really require his assistance. He fixed the pump at the kitchen sink that had been working perfectly well. He built new shelves in the larder. He repaired a window shutter that Amelia had not even realized was loose. Amelia, for her part, found herself taking extra care with her appearance, wearing her nicer dresses, spending more time on her hair. She cooked Isaiah's favorite meals and made sure there were fresh flowers on the table every day. She lingered in the evenings on the porch, hoping for conversation, hoping for those moments when their eyes met and something electric passed between them. Finally, in early September, things came to a head. Amelia was in the kitchen preparing dinner when she heard a commotion from the corrals. She rushed outside to find Isaiah on the ground, clutching his leg, one of the new mares dancing nervously nearby. "What happened?" Amelia cried, running to his side. "She kicked me," Isaiah said through gritted teeth. "My own fault. I was not paying attention." Amelia helped him to his feet and half carried him into the house. She settled him in a chair and carefully examined his leg. There was already significant swelling, and Isaiah winced when she touched the area. "I do not think it is broken," she said, "but it is badly bruised. You need to stay off it for a few days." "I do not have time for that," Isaiah protested. "The horses need care." "The horses will be fine for a few days. You need to rest and heal. If you try to work on that leg, you will only make it worse." For the next 3 days, Amelia nursed Isaiah, making him stay in bed or at least seated with his leg elevated. She brought him meals, changed the cold compresses on his injury, and managed both the household and the essential ranch chores. It meant long days and hard work, but she did not mind. Taking care of Isaiah felt right in a way she could not fully explain. Isaiah, for his part, was a terrible patient. He was restless and irritable, unused to being still, frustrated by his forced inactivity. But he also seemed touched by Amelia's care, his eyes following her as she moved around the room, his thanks genuine and heartfelt. On the 3rd evening, as Amelia was changing the compress on his leg, Isaiah caught her hand. "You did not have to do all this," he said quietly. "The ranch work, taking care of me, it is far beyond what I hired you to do." "I know," Amelia said. "I wanted to help." "Why?" Isaiah asked, his gray eyes searching her face. "Why do you care so much about this place, about me?" Amelia could have deflected the question, could have given a safe, non-committal answer. But she was tired of pretending, tired of hiding her feelings. "Because this place is my home," she said. "And because you are not just my employer, Isaiah, you are my friend, and you are important to me." The words hung in the air between them. Isaiah did not release her hand. If anything, his grip tightened slightly. "You are important to me too," he said. "More important than you probably realize. These months with you here have been the happiest of my life. I wake up looking forward to the day because I know I will see you at breakfast. I find excuses to come in from the fields because I want to hear your voice. You have given me something I did not even know I was missing." Amelia's heart was racing. "What did I give you?" "A reason to care," Isaiah said simply. "A reason to build something that matters. You made this ranch into a home, Amelia. But more than that, you made me want to be better, to do better. You made me want a future instead of just surviving day to day." "Isaiah," Amelia whispered, not sure what she wanted to say, just needing to speak his name. He pulled her closer and she went willingly, kneeling beside his chair. "I know this is not appropriate," he said. "I am your employer. You are dependent on me for your livelihood. I do not want to put you in an uncomfortable position, but I need you to know how I feel. I care about you, Amelia, more than I should, more than is probably wise, but I cannot help it." "I care about you too," Amelia said, her voice trembling. "I've been trying not to, trying to be sensible and practical, but I cannot help it either. You are a good man, Isaiah, the best man I have ever known, and I am happier here with you than I have ever been anywhere else." Isaiah reached up and gently touched her face, his calloused fingers incredibly gentle. "I want to court you properly," he said. "I want to do this right, but I do not even know how to begin. It has been so long since I have had these feelings for anyone. "We can figure it out together," Amelia said. "We do not have to rush. We can take our time and see where this leads." Isaiah smiled, a genuine, open smile that transformed his usually serious face. "I would like that very much." He leaned forward and kissed her, soft and tentative, a question rather than a demand. Amelia answered by kissing him back, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady beneath her palm. When they pulled apart, both were breathing unevenly. Amelia rested her forehead against Isaiah's, feeling something click into place deep in her chest. This was right. This was where she belonged. "We should probably talk about this," Isaiah said, his voice slightly unsteady. "About what it means, what happens next." "Tomorrow," Amelia said. "Let us just enjoy this moment tonight. Tomorrow we can be practical and sensible. But tonight, let us just be two people who care about each other." Isaiah nodded and pulled her into an embrace. They sat like that for a long time, simply holding each other, finding comfort and joy in the closeness. Outside, the California night settled over the ranch, stars emerging in the darkening sky. Inside, two lonely people had found each other and were beginning to build something new. The next morning brought a new dynamic to their relationship. There was shyness mixed with joy, an awareness of each other that had not been there before, or at least had not been acknowledged. They were careful with each other, gentle, still learning what this new aspect of their relationship meant. Isaiah's leg was much improved, well enough for him to move around cautiously. Over breakfast, they talked seriously about their situation. Isaiah was adamant that Amelia should not feel pressured or obligated in any way. He made it clear that if she wanted to maintain their relationship as purely employer and employee, he would respect that, though it would pain him. Amelia assured him that her feelings were genuine and freely given. She was not acting out of obligation or fear of losing her position. She cared for him because of who he was, not because of what he could provide. They agreed to take things slowly, to continue as they had been but with the added element of acknowledged romantic interest. They would keep their relationship private for now, not making any public declarations until they were both certain of where it was heading. Given their histories and the judgmental nature of the town, discretion seemed wise. As autumn approached, their relationship deepened naturally. Isaiah began to teach Amelia about the horses, showing her how to handle them, how to read their body language, how to gain their trust. She proved to be a quick learner, developing a confidence around the animals that surprised them both. In turn, Amelia shared her love of reading with Isaiah. In the evenings, she would sometimes read aloud to him from the books of poetry she loved, or from novels they purchased on their trips to town. Isaiah would listen with his eyes closed, occasionally commenting on a passage that struck him. These quiet domestic evenings felt precious to both of them. They were building a life together, even if they had not formally acknowledged it. They were creating routines and shared experiences, inside jokes and comfortable silences. They were becoming partners in the truest sense. In October, Isaiah took Amelia to a harvest dance in town. It was the first time they had appeared together socially, and Amelia was nervous about how the town would react. But Isaiah was by her side, steady and reassuring, and she held her head high. The reaction was mixed. Some people were clearly scandalized by the idea of the strange rancher courting the widow Grant, but others seemed to accept it as a reasonable match, two odd people finding each other. And a very few, seemed genuinely happy for them. Isaiah was not much of a dancer, he admitted as much, but he made the effort for Amelia's sake. They moved around the floor awkwardly at first, then with increasing comfort as they found their rhythm. Amelia found herself laughing, genuinely joyful in a way she had not been since she was a girl. On the ride home that night, Isaiah was quiet. Amelia worried that the evening had been too much for him, that the social interaction had exhausted his limited patience for crowds and small talk. But when they arrived at the ranch, he helped her down from the wagon and held her hands in his. "I want to marry you," he said, the words coming out in a rush. "I know we have only been courting for a few months, and perhaps I should wait longer to ask. But I am certain, Amelia, I want you to be my wife, not just my housekeeper or my friend. I want to build a life with you, a real life, a family if we are blessed that way. I want to wake up every morning knowing you are mine and I am yours." Amelia felt tears prick her eyes. "Are you sure? You hardly know me, not really. What if I am not what you think I am? What if I disappoint you?" "You could never disappoint me," Isaiah said with conviction. "I know you, Amelia. I know your strength and your kindness. I know your courage and your resilience. I know that you make my life better in every possible way. That is enough. That is everything." "Then yes," Amelia said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you. I want that too, a life with you, a future with you. I want all of it." Isaiah pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply, and Amelia felt the last of her carefully maintained walls crumble. She was his, and he was hers, and nothing else mattered. They were married in November in a simple ceremony at the small church in Randsburg. The attendance was sparse, mostly neighbors from nearby ranches who had come to know and respect Isaiah over the years. The townspeople who had once shunned Amelia were notably absent, but she did not care. She stood beside Isaiah in a simple blue dress, her hand in his, and spoke her vows with a full heart. The preacher pronounced them husband and wife, and Isaiah kissed her sweetly in front of the small gathering. They were married. They were beginning a new chapter together. The wedding celebration was held at the ranch. Amelia had prepared food for days, and Isaiah had cleaned and organized the house and yard. Their neighbors brought contributions, pies and casseroles and bottles of wine. It was not a grand affair, but it was warm and genuine, a community coming together to celebrate a new beginning. As the evening wore on and the guests began to depart, Amelia and Isaiah stood together on their porch, watching the last wagon roll away down the valley road. The house behind them was a mess that would need cleaning tomorrow, but neither of them cared. They were alone, finally and officially husband and wife. Isaiah took Amelia's hand and led her inside, to the bedroom that had been his alone but was now theirs. They came together with tenderness and passion. Two people who had been lonely for too long finally finding completion in each other. It was nothing like Amelia's experiences with Thomas, which had been perfunctory at best and painful at worst. This was different. Isaiah was different. He was gentle and patient, concerned with her comfort and pleasure as much as his own. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, Amelia's head on Isaiah's chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I love you," she whispered into the quiet. "I know we have not said it before, but I love you, Isaiah. I have loved you for months, maybe from the beginning." "I love you too," Isaiah said, his arms tightening around her. "You are the best thing that has ever happened to me, Amelia Montgomery. You saved me from a life half lived. You gave me hope and purpose and joy. I will spend the rest of my life trying to make you as happy as you have made me." They fell asleep in each other's arms, two people who had survived hardship and loneliness and judgment to find each other, to build something beautiful from the ruins of their separate pasts. The winter passed in a haze of domestic happiness. Amelia had never imagined that married life could be this good, this peaceful and fulfilling. She and Isaiah worked together on the ranch, partners in every sense. He consulted her on decisions about the livestock and the land. She managed the household finances and kept meticulous records of expenses and income. The breeding program Isaiah had invested in began to show results. The 3 mares he had purchased produced healthy foals in the spring, strong and well-formed, exactly what he had hoped for. News of his quality stock spread among the ranching community, and he began to receive inquiries about purchasing horses. The ranch began to prosper in a way it never had before. Isaiah attributed this to the foals, but Amelia knew it was more than that. It was the result of 2 people working together toward a common goal, supporting and encouraging each other, building something bigger than either could have managed alone. In March, Amelia realized she was pregnant. She waited a few weeks to be certain before telling Isaiah, wanting to be sure before raising his hopes. When she finally told him one evening after dinner, his reaction was everything she could have wanted. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy, his usually serious face transformed by delight. "A baby," he said wonderingly, setting her down gently as if she were made of glass. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Amelia asked, though she could see the answer in his face. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Isaiah said. "I never thought I would have this, a wife, a child, a family. I had resigned myself to being alone, and now I have everything I ever wanted and did not dare hope for." They talked late into the night about the baby, about names and preparations, about what kind of parents they wanted to be. Isaiah was determined to be nothing like his own father, who had been cold and distant. Amelia wanted to give their child the kind of loving, stable home she had briefly known before her parents died. As Amelia's pregnancy progressed, Isaiah became even more attentive and protective. He insisted she rest more, that she not overwork herself. He took over many of the heavier household tasks and hired a young man from a neighboring ranch to help with the livestock, so he could spend more time near the house. Amelia found his protectiveness endearing, though sometimes excessive. She was healthy and strong, and pregnancy was a natural condition, not an illness. But she understood that his concern came from love, and she allowed him to fuss over her within reason. In the summer, when the heat was intense and Amelia was large and uncomfortable, Isaiah surprised her by hiring a woman from town to come help with the housework a few days a week. It was an expense they could not really afford, but Isaiah insisted. He wanted Amelia to rest and prepare for the baby's arrival without exhausting herself with daily chores. The woman he hired was named Martha, a widow in her 50s who had fallen on hard times after her husband died. She was grateful for the work and proved to be efficient and unobtrusive. She also provided female companionship for Amelia, something she had not realized she was missing. Martha had raised 5 children of her own and was full of practical advice about childbirth and infant care. In late September, as the heat began to break and the evenings grew cool again, Amelia went into labor. Isaiah sent the ranch hand galloping to town for the midwife, while he stayed with Amelia, holding her hand and trying not to show how terrified he was. The midwife arrived and took charge with brisk efficiency. Labor was long and painful, but Amelia was strong and the baby was healthy. As dawn broke over the valley, Isaiah and Amelia's son was born, screaming lustily, perfect in every way. Isaiah held his son for the first time with trembling hands, tears streaming down his face. "He is beautiful," he whispered. "He is perfect." They named him James after Amelia's father with Isaiah's surname of Montgomery. Little James was a good baby, healthy and growing well, with his father's gray eyes and his mother's delicate features. Those first months of parenthood were exhausting but joyful. Isaiah was a devoted father, helping with the baby in the nights, changing diapers and walking the floor when James was fussy. He built a cradle with his own hands, beautiful and sturdy, carved with intricate designs during the long evenings. As James grew from a newborn to an infant and then a toddler, the ranch continued to prosper. Isaiah's horse breeding program was now well established and profitable. He had expanded his herd and improved his facilities. Word of his quality stock had spread, and he was selling horses not just locally but to buyers from as far away as San Francisco and Los Angeles. With the increased income, Isaiah was able to make improvements to the house and the ranch. He added a room onto the house for James, giving him his own space. He built a proper barn to replace the old rickety structure that had served for too long. He hired 2 permanent ranch hands to help with the growing operation. Amelia managed all of this expansion with her characteristic efficiency. She kept the books, managed the household, and somehow found time to be a loving mother and wife. Martha continued to come several days a week to help, and she and Amelia had become genuine friends. On James's 2nd birthday, Isaiah and Amelia stood on their porch watching their son chase chickens in the yard. The ranch spread out around them, prosperous and well-maintained, a testament to years of hard work and dedication. "I have been thinking," Isaiah said, pulling Amelia close. "This place needs a name. It has always just been the ranch, but it should be more than that. It should have an identity." "What did you have in mind?" Amelia asked. "I thought we might call it Montgomery Valley Ranch, after the valley and after us, after our family. This is our legacy, what we will pass to James and any other children we might have. It should have a proper name." "Montgomery Valley Ranch," Amelia said, testing the words. "I like it. It sounds solid and established, like we are putting down permanent roots." "We are," Isaiah said. "This is home. This is where we belong." Amelia could not disagree. The ranch that had once been just a place of employment, a refuge from an unkind world, had become truly home. She had made it so with her care and her work, but Isaiah had made it so too with his acceptance and his love. Together, they had transformed it from a lonely bachelor's property into a thriving family ranch. 2 years later, Amelia gave birth to their 2nd child, a daughter they named Emily after Amelia's mother. Emily was different from James, quieter and more observant, but just as loved. Isaiah doted on his daughter, this tiny person who looked so much like her mother. With 2 children, the house was full of noise and laughter and occasional chaos. Amelia had never been happier. This was the life she had dreamed of as a girl, before circumstances had forced her into a nightmare marriage with Thomas. She had a husband who loved and respected her, children who brought joy every day, and a home that was truly hers. The years passed in the way they do when life is good, quickly but full of memorable moments. James grew into a serious boy who loved the horses and followed his father everywhere. Emily was bright and curious, always asking questions and exploring. They were healthy, happy children, raised with love and discipline in equal measure. Isaiah continued to build the ranch, expanding carefully and sustainably. He had learned from his earlier mistakes, the years of barely scraping by, and now he planned for the future. He invested in better stock, improved facilities, and diversified the ranch's income sources. He also began to be active in the regional ranching community, sharing his expertise and learning from others. Amelia had found her place in the community as well. The women who had once shunned her now sought her out for her practical advice and her skills. She organized a ladies' aid society in Randsburg, raising money for the church and helping families in need. She had proven, through years of respectable married life, that she was not the person Thomas Grant's gossip had painted her as, On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isaiah surprised Amelia with a trip to San Francisco. They left the children with Martha and her sister and took the train to the city for a week. It was the first time either of them had been away from the ranch for more than a day since they married. San Francisco was overwhelming and exciting, full of people and noise and modern conveniences they had only heard about. They stayed in a nice hotel, ate in restaurants, and walked along the waterfront. But more than the sights and experiences, they enjoyed the time together, just the two of them, remembering who they were as a couple beyond parents and ranchers. On their last evening in the city, they had dinner at an elegant restaurant overlooking the bay. As they ate, Isaiah reached across the table and took Amelia's hand. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" Amelia asked. "For everything. For taking a chance on a strange, lonely rancher who did not know what he was missing, for making my house a home, for giving me a family and a purpose, for being my partner and my love, for all of it, Amelia. Thank you." Amelia felt tears prick her eyes. "You saved me too," she said. "When I came to your ranch, I was broken and lost. I had no hope, no future. You gave me all of that. You gave me a place to belong and a reason to believe in good things again. I should be thanking you." "Then we saved each other," Isaiah said, raising her hand to his lips, "and we built something beautiful together." They returned to the ranch renewed and reconnected, ready to face whatever challenges and joys the future held. The children were delighted to have them home, and James proudly showed his father all the chores he had done in his absence. Life settled back into its comfortable rhythms. The seasons turned, each bringing its own work and rewards. Spring meant foaling season and new life. Summer meant hard work in the heat and long days of training young horses. Autumn brought round-ups and sales. Winter was for rest and planning for the year ahead. Through it all, Amelia and Isaiah remained partners and lovers, their bond growing deeper with each passing year. They had their disagreements, of course. What couple did not? But they had learned to talk through problems rather than letting resentment build. They had learned to support each other's dreams and to share the burdens. When James was 15 and Emily was 13, Isaiah began to teach his son the business side of ranching, preparing him to eventually take over Montgomery Valley Ranch. James was eager and intelligent, asking thoughtful questions and showing good judgment. Emily, not to be left out, demanded to learn as well, and Isaiah found himself teaching his daughter about breeding lines and market conditions. Amelia watched her family with quiet satisfaction. This was what she had helped build, a legacy that would continue beyond her and Isaiah. Her children would grow up knowing they were loved and valued, with skills and knowledge to make their way in the world. They would never know the kind of desperation and helplessness she had known. On a warm evening in late spring, when James was 17 and Emily 15, the family gathered on the porch after dinner as they often did. James was talking about a young mare he wanted to purchase, making his case to his father with the kind of detailed analysis that showed he had been paying attention to his lessons. Emily was reading, her nose buried in a book as usual. Isaiah and Amelia sat close together, his arm around her shoulders. "You know," Isaiah said to the children, "your mother and I have been thinking it is time we made some changes around here." Both children looked up with interest. "What kind of changes?" James asked. "Well, you are almost a man now, James. In another year, you will be 18, old enough to take on real responsibility. I want to make you a partner in the ranch, give you a share in the ownership and the profits. You have earned it with your hard work and dedication." James's eyes widened with surprise and pleasure. "Really? You mean it?" "I do. And Emily, you have shown just as much interest and aptitude, even if you are younger. When you turn 18, I will do the same for you. This ranch belongs to all of us, not just to me. It is our family's legacy." Emily jumped up and hugged her father, her book forgotten. "Thank you, Papa. I will work hard, I promise." Amelia watched her husband with her children and felt her heart swell with love. This man, this wonderful, generous man, who had once been so lonely and lost, had become the best father and husband she could have imagined. He had built not just a successful ranch, but a family full of love and purpose. Later that night, after the children had gone to bed, Amelia and Isaiah sat together in their bedroom. "You made them very happy tonight," Amelia said. "They deserve it," Isaiah replied. "They have worked hard and they care about this place. Besides, I want them to know they have a future here, that they do not have to go out into the world alone and uncertain the way we both did." "We have done well, haven't we?" Amelia said. "Against all odds, we built something good." "We have," Isaiah agreed. He pulled her into his arms and she rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat as she had done countless times over the years. "I love you, Amelia. After all these years, I love you more than ever." "I love you too," Amelia whispered. "Thank you for hiring the woman nobody would touch. Thank you for seeing who I really was." "Thank you for making my house a home," Isaiah replied, "for making my life worth living." They held each other in the quiet darkness. Two people who had found each other in the wilderness of the American West, who had survived hardship and judgment to build a life of love and prosperity. They had started with nothing but hope and determination, and they had created a legacy that would endure for generations. As the years continued to pass, Montgomery Valley Ranch became one of the most respected horse breeding operations in Central California. James married a girl from a neighboring ranch and brought his wife home to Montgomery Valley, where Isaiah built them a small house on the property. Emily, true to her independent spirit, went east to attend college, something almost unheard of for a woman from a ranch. But she returned home after graduation to apply her education to improving the ranch's business practices. Both children had their own children, giving Isaiah and Amelia grandchildren to dote on. The ranch house that had once been empty and echoing with Isaiah's loneliness was now full of family, multiple generations living and working together. Isaiah and Amelia grew old together, their hair turning gray, their faces weathering with age and sun. But their love remained constant, a foundation that held strong through all of life's changes and challenges. They still sat on the porch in the evenings, now in comfortable chairs James had built for them, watching the sunset over the valley they had made their own. On their 30th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren threw them a celebration. The house and yard were full of people, family and friends and neighbors, all gathering to honor the couple who had built Montgomery Valley Ranch. There was food and music and laughter, stories shared and memories revisited. As the evening drew to a close and the guests began to leave, James stood up to make a toast. "To my parents," he said, raising his glass, "who taught me that hard work, dedication, and love can overcome any obstacle. Who built this ranch from almost nothing and made it a place of prosperity and family. Who showed me what a good marriage looks like and what it means to be a good parent. Thank you for everything you have given us. This ranch, this family, this legacy, it all started with the two of you and your determination to build something beautiful together." Everyone raised their glasses and echoed the toast. Amelia felt tears streaming down her cheeks, but they were happy tears. She looked at Isaiah and saw the same emotion reflected in his eyes. Later, when everyone had gone and the house was quiet again, they sat together on the porch one more time. The stars overhead were as bright as they had been 30 years ago when Amelia first arrived at this ranch, uncertain and frightened, hoping for nothing more than a safe place to live and work. "We did it," Amelia said softly. "We built a good life." "We did," Isaiah agreed. "And it started the day you answered my advertisement. The day I was desperate enough to hire the woman nobody would touch. The day you were brave enough to take a chance on a strange, lonely rancher." "The best decision either of us ever made," Amelia said. Isaiah pulled her close, and they sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars and listening to the night sounds of the ranch. Inside the house, they could hear Emily settling her children down for the night in one of the guest rooms. In the small house across the yard, lights glowed warmly where James and his family lived. The ranch was alive with family, with purpose, with love. This was their legacy, Amelia thought. Not just the land and the horses and the buildings, but the family they had created, the love they had shared, the example they had set. They had started with nothing but their own broken pieces and had built something whole and beautiful. Isaiah Montgomery, the lonely rancher who had needed help but did not know how to ask for it, who had taken a chance on a woman no one else would touch. Amelia Grant Montgomery, who had survived abuse and rejection to find her true home and her true love. Together, they had created Montgomery Valley Ranch, a place of prosperity and family, a testament to what was possible when two people chose to believe in each other and in the future. As they sat together under the vast California sky, surrounded by the land they had worked and the family they had raised, both felt a profound sense of peace and gratitude. They had lived fully and loved deeply, and that was all anyone could ask for. The ranch would continue after them, passed to their children and grandchildren, who would add their own chapters to the story. But the foundation would always be Isaiah and Amelia, the lonely rancher and the woman nobody would touch, who had found each other in the wilderness and had made a house into a home, a ranch into a legacy, and two separate, broken lives into one beautiful, complete story of love and redemption.